In this video, we're going to look at how to set up a background process or a service in a Docker deployment or a Docker environment. So to do this, we'll be using supervisor installed on the host environment, and then the supervisor will periodically trigger a script or a program in the Docker container of choice. So let's look at how this is done. So I have already logged into my machine. This is my server with it has some Docker services running. To see the Docker services, I shall just navigate to the folder and run sudo docker ps-a. So you can see I have several services running. Let me expand this more to give me. So I have several services running. I have my web container, I have PHP admin, I have my PHP container. So this is my web server, it's running off Nginx. I have my PHP container, my MySQL container, I have Elasticsearch container, Kibana, and so on. So I have multiple containers all running on this machine, with each of them having their respective names. So their names is a little bit, let me expand this more so we can see their names. So okay, so you can see their names all listed here at the end: web, PHP admin, backend, conf.d. So currently on this setup, the web is the Nginx container, backend is the PHP container, conf.d is the MySQL container, and you can see the various ports they are running off. So let's proceed to our tasks. So our task is to set up a background process or service in the Docker deployment. So in this setup, we want a script in the PHP container, which is the backend, to execute periodically. So it could be in form of a cron job, it could be in form of a service, it could be in form of a worker. So but we want a script in this container, a PHP script in this case. So this could be anything. It could be a Java program, it could be a shell, a batch script, or a shell script. It could be anything. So we want it to run periodically. The first step we're going to take would be to install supervisor on the host machine. So the host machine is the operating system where we've installed Docker. So currently I'm accessing the host machine through SSH on this window. So this is the operating system where Docker is currently installed. So step one, install supervisor. You could Google how to install supervisor. It's very straightforward command, depending on the variation of Linux you're using. Once supervisor has been installed, you can confirm by simply running supervisor status all. This is one way to verify that you have supervisor installed. So in this case, I have it installed and I also have some services set up and running. So that's why you can see these two services. So now, assuming that you've installed supervisor, let's stop all these services So, and status, so I can say I have 2 services but stop. So now I'm assuming you've installed supervisor. Let's look at the next step, how to install a service on supervisor. So to install a service consists of 3 steps. Step 1, you would create the service configuration file. Step 2, we define the contents of the config file, and then step 3, we start the service. So those are the 3 basic steps for setting up a service. So let's, using this as an example, let's say I call this test. So I call this test, I come here and I create my config file. I also give, so this program here should be the name of this service, so I call it test. Now the command is the is the instruction I want to execute on the host. So since the host has access to the services, the various Docker containers, via this command docker exec, so I simply put docker exec so as the host can access a Docker container. Then I specify the name of the container. So in this case, the container where my PHP script is PHP interpreter is installed is called backend. So I put the name of the container. Then next, I can now specify what command should run in the container. So I want to run PHP and execute a specific script, so I just have that script in here. So once I do this, I can also set my log files. So it's a good practice to name the log files the same name with the service. So, and you can locate it in any folder you want this to be located in. So let's leave the log files in our home folder for now for this test purpose. So I take my commands, I paste in the config file, and then I save. So once I have done that, I have created a new service on supervisor. I want to instruct supervisor to reread all configuration files so it can recognize that new service. That's what this first command does. This next command instructs supervisors to update and finally to start the services. I could run them one by one, but in this case I have concatenated all of them together. So let's have a look at, before running it, let's look at before. So you see I have only 2 services. Now I'm going to run only these first 2 parts of the command, and now I run status again. So now I can see I have 3 services now set up and running. So that's how we add the new service on supervisor. This is the important bit that instructs Docker and targets a specific Docker container, and then the command to run on that container. So before doing this, you may want to test out your command. If your commands are not correct, your service will not likely not start running. It would crash. So you want to always test to make sure your command is correct before running, putting it in your service configuration file on supervisor. So I'm going to stop all this, and I can test this command directly from here by running sudo docker exec, and now this command execute this PHP script, let's go and look at what is inside the PHP script. So this is the PHP script. It inherits another PHP file called service. I'm not going to show you the content of this file, but what's the basic thing in this file is that there is a while loop in this file that keeps running forever and ever. That's why you're not seeing any result. But let's stop this, and for the purpose of demonstration, let's just echo something. Hello Mike. Steve and Dan. So let's simply echo something and execute this file again. So now you can see hello Mike, Steve and Dan. So the moment you've tested this command and it's okay, you're good to go. You can set up your service and go ahead and start it. One of a very good test case to run after all this is set up is when your services are all running and you've confirmed the operation, you restart the server to ensure that on reboot the services do not crash but keep running smoothly. So that's a very nice test case to explore. Some common challenges in applications that connect to a SQL database or to a database is as a result of when on reboots the script or the command or the program connecting to the database launches faster than the database. So before the database engine has booted or finished starting up, the program would have launched and tried to connect, made several attempts to connect to the database, and depending on how the program is written, it might throw an error or it might exit, and that will make the service stop running. So you could solve this problem by writing that program to fail gracefully, or alternatively you could put a delay in that program, a startup delay, that okay, maybe either you wait so period of time before trying to connect or launching that program, or you could ask the program to perform a preliminary test where it tests if the database connection is accessible before it launches the various subsequent parts of its command. So in this case I took the simplest approach, which is using a delay. So in this case there is a 10 minutes delay or warm-up delay time I have included, such that the program doesn't start running until after a certain period of time has elapsed. So and finally, to conclude, what are the applications of this of this tutorial? So we could use this to where we have cases whereby we need something to run periodically and execute a command in a Docker container. We could use this to achieve that. Common situations that come to mind are cases where in a business application a bill needs to be generated maybe every 12 hours or 24 hours, or we want to set up a worker that periodically scans a folder for maybe changes in the contents of that folder, or we want to use it a worker to consume a message queue. to consume messages in a message queue system. So we could use this process to solve or to meet any of those kinds of needs that I have described. So thank you, and that's the end.